Okay, let's jump right in. So, picture this. We're in ancient India, right outside the city of Rājagṛha. And in these gardens, a massive philosophical showdown is about to happen between two masters who have completely different ideas about what it even means to be free. And that fiery quote, man, it just sets the stage perfectly. It's from an ascetic leader, a guy named Nigrodha. He's heard about the Buddha, Gautama, and let's just say he is not impressed. He's so confident in his own way of doing things that he actually boasts out loud that he can shatter the Buddha's arguments like a fragile, empty pot. So what was this fight really all about? Well, at its core, it was a massive disagreement over the real path to enlightenment. And this wasn't just some minor squabble, you know? This was a true clash of philosophies, putting two totally different worldviews head to head. And this kind of lays it all out. On one side, you've got Nigrodha and his crew. They're loud, they're out in public debating politics, war, all kinds of worldly stuff. For them, spiritual practice is almost like a performance for everyone to see. And then, on the other side, you've got the Buddha's approach. Quiet solitude, focusing inward, and a mindful practice that's done far away from the public eye. So, how does this whole thing come to a boil? Well, it's all because of a lay follower of the Buddha named Hihi. He just happens to be walking past Nigrodha's camp when he overhears this empty pot boast. And he decides, you know what, the Buddha needs to hear about this. Rājagṛha's arrogance wasn't just hot air. It was actually rooted in his whole worldview. He really believed that if you had wisdom, you had to prove it in public. He saw the Buddha's quiet, solitary meditation as a sign of weakness. He even mocked him with this pretty harsh image of a one-eyed cow that can only graze at the edge of the field, never brave enough to go to the center. So what was Nigrodha's path then? What made him so sure he was on the right track? Well, it was a path defined by intense, almost unimaginable, physical self-denial. And yeah, this list really shows you just how extreme their practice was. I mean, we're talking about sleeping on beds of thorns, fasting for weeks, wearing rough clothes woven from human hair. These were forms of constant, intense physical hardship. But to them, this wasn't punishment. It was the fast track to spiritual purification. So when the Buddha eventually arrives and starts to gently question him, Nigrodha doesn't back down one bit. Nope, he doubles down, declaring with total certainty that these grueling physical practices are the one and only way to reach ultimate truth and liberation. All right, so the stage is set, the challenge has been made, and now the Buddha arrives. And he begins to just systematically take apart Rājagṛha's entire philosophy, not with force, not with anger, but with simple, devastating logic. The Buddha just flips the whole conversation on its head with this one simple question. He doesn't argue about their discipline or how hard it is. Instead, he just asks, is this actually working? Are these impressive, painful things you're doing truly making you free on the inside? And right here, the Buddha introduces this critical idea he calls affliction. Really, the best way to think about it is like a kind of spiritual poison. It's the ego, the pride, the jealousy that can secretly grow right alongside all your hard work, contaminating it from the inside and making the whole thing kind of pointless. And here's his first example. He says, look, you go through all this suffering, all this intense discipline, and the practice itself might be pure. But the second you start thinking, wow, the king is going to be so impressed when he sees this, that's it. The affliction of pride has snuck in, and the practice isn't about liberation anymore. It's about your ego. The Buddha then just lays out this whole psychological trap. It starts with real effort, right? But that effort can lead to arrogance, which makes you look down on other people. Then, when someone else gets the praise that you want, jealousy pops up. The Buddha's diagnosis is sharp and clear. This chain reaction isn't freedom. It's just another kind of mental prison. And the list just keeps going. The Buddha points out all these other afflictions that were plaguing the ascetics: bad-mouthing other teachers, holding on to anger, being deceptive to seem more advanced than you really are. Every single one is another link in the chain that keeps them trapped, no matter how much they suffer on the outside. So, after this absolute takedown, what's left? Well, the Buddha doesn't just tear down Nigrodha's philosophy, he offers this profound alternative vision of what real freedom actually looks like. And then, in this perfect full-circle moment, the disciple Hihi, the one who started this whole thing, turns to the now humbled Rājagṛha and says this. he throws that arrogant boast right back in his face. And you can just imagine the silence. And this is the result. That crowd that was so loud, so sure of themselves, is now completely silent. The text says their heads are bowed, just lost in thought. The Buddha's words shattered their certainty, not like an empty pot, but more like a mirror, forcing them to actually look at their own minds. So here's the real kicker. The Buddha makes it clear that the real work isn't on the outside. It's not about what you eat or how you sleep. True liberation is an inside job. It's the patient, quiet work of rooting out greed, hatred, and confusion from your own mind, not for an audience, but for the sake of your own genuine freedom. And that leaves all of us with a really powerful question that hits just as hard today as it did thousands of years ago. In our own lives, in our work, our goals for self-improvement, even in our little acts of kindness, what's our real motivation? Are we actually pursuing virtue itself, or are we just chasing the appearance of being virtuous? This ancient story really asks each of us to look inside and answer that question honestly.